Hey Fae folk, welcome and welcome back. So for today's video, we are going to be dipping our toes into something slightly more serious slash like real world applicable than maybe we normally do on this channel, but I do think that it's still an important and interesting topic, and hopefully it will be informative and fun for you guys. So today we are going to be talking about kind of the intersection of environmentalism and dog collecting. So this actually was a request from one of y'all, and to be fair, I'm not 100% sure that this is like exactly what you wanted from me from a video when you made the request, but I hope this fulfills what you were looking for, because today we're specifically going to be talking about ways that we as dog collectors can engage in the hobby that brings us so much joy while still trying to be as environmentally responsible as possible. Now with that, a few huge things that I need to say. The first one is a big fat thank you to you guys. I did ask y'all on my community tab for ways that you try to be environmentally responsible in terms of your dog collecting habits, and so many of you responded. It was super, super helpful. I'm not going to be reading out any like individual responses because a lot of them were kind of along the same themes or lines, but it was really, really helpful to kind of collate into kind of main bullet points that I can give, I guess. So yeah, that was super, super helpful. And I really do appreciate y'all, because I don't know if I could have made the video talking about all these different ways that we can try to be environmentally conscious if y'all didn't help me out. So that's the most important thing to say, but also kind of more serious now. I really, really, really want to make sure that I say this in the beginning. I don't want anyone to feel judged from this video. I don't want this to come off as me being like on my high horse, all sanctimonious, like if you don't do this, you're a bad person, or if you don't do this all the time, you're not doing enough. That's not what I mean at all. And I will be the first person to say that I'm not perfect in this regard. I don't do every single thing that we're going to be talking about today, every single time I open a doll. Like, I'm not perfect. I try to do things like in an environmentally conscious way when I can and like when I'm thinking about it, but there are times that I don't. And so I'm absolutely not here to judge you if you don't do any of the things on this list. That's not my place. That's not my problem. So like, I want to make sure that this video is a useful tool for people to kind of think about how they can be more responsible with their collections, maybe give some ideas as to first steps to take, but I absolutely am not trying to make anyone feel bad. And a big fat reason for that is the last thing that I want to say before we get into it. And that is that while I do wholeheartedly believe that as individuals, we can do things both in the realm of dog collecting and also in a lot of other areas in our life to try to lessen our specific environmental impacts, but I also think that the most negative environmental impacts come from corporations, and therefore the biggest responsibility is on them to try to do better. You know, like obviously one person recycling, that's good. You know, that's something that's not going into a landfill. But if a whole company is recycling and actively trying to do better with the products that they make, that's going to have a lot more of an impact. So I do think this video is like a good one to do. And I was happy to get the request because I think that for sure there are some people who like want to get better at being environmentally responsible, or maybe people who are already working on it but like want to have more ideas. Like, I think this is a good thing to do to kind of take personal responsibility for those who are interested in environmentalism. But at the end of the day, I do think that corporations hold the most responsibility for that. So I just wanted to say that because again, I think it ties into not judging people. I'm not going to judge you for like not recycling every single doll box that you get, because I just don't feel like that has the same impact as like what companies can do. And like, I just don't feel like it's right to attack an individual person for not doing their utmost best at every single second of every single day, when ultimately speaking, companies like Mattel and MGA could do so, so much more. Hope that makes sense. I know that's real serious and like not as fun, so I am sorry, but I did just want to get that out of the way. And like, that's kind of the place that I'm coming from as well. And I guess you could say that's my bias, is that I do believe that the onus of responsibility when it comes to environmentalism and climate change is on like companies and like big operations and like people who have power, and not just like your average individual person. Again, average individual people can make a difference. Like, I'm not trying to say that we can't or that it's useless, but I just do think that it comes with a caveat. So those are all of my not so fun things that I had to say to get out of the way in the intro, but I am done blabbing now. Now we can get into the like useful part and hopefully the more fun part of the video and start talking about the actions that we individually can take as dog collectors to try to be more environmentally conscious. So I did organize all of my bullet points into the like traditional reduce, reuse, recycle format, just because I can, why not? And also I do think that it is kind of like a useful way to think about these things. So obviously we are going to be starting off with reduce. And I think the most obvious thing here is that if you are worried about your personal responsibility when it comes to environmentalism and the impacts that you have as a person, and if you want to be someone who collects dolls, is that you can simply buy fewer dolls. We are going to touch on like the fact that they've been manufactured already in a second. Like we're going to get there. But in general, like if you're worried about your own impact, you definitely can be more selective on the dolls that you decide to buy. Now, I do want to say I'm absolutely not judging anyone who has a very large collection or might be like a completionist, because I'm not exactly coming from a point of having a teensy weensy collection, like I have a fairly substantial doll collection. And so I'm not here to hate on people who have big collections, because I know there are so many people who maybe do collect in a completionist way and that's how they find their joy in doll collecting. Or there are so many people who just genuinely love so many things and like can find something to love about almost every doll that comes out. And so if that's you and you are consistently getting joy from those dolls that you're buying, that's fine. Like that's great. I feel like at that point, if you reduce and you're reducing your happiness along with it, that's kind of a different story. And like, that's not really one I want to go for. I don't want anyone to be like less happy in the hobby, right? It's more so just if you find yourself being someone who consistently buys dolls because of the hype and then you regret it later, or maybe you buy a bunch of dolls and you find yourself falling out of love with them very quickly, which is very easy to fall into. Like, I feel like the sense of FOMO and like the excitement when new dolls come out is so real. But if you find yourself regretting very often, it might be worth it to kind of take a step back and wait a little bit longer before you buy dolls, really solidify your feelings before you buy them and reduce the amount that you are purchasing in general. This is something that I try to do. I try to be pretty critical with new doll releases, and I have a whole doll buying rubric that I use to kind of ensure that when I'm getting a doll, I genuinely like the doll enough for it to be worth me spending the money on, and I'm not just buying it and then I'll have to like deal with it later, right? Like I want to buy dolls that I want to keep in my collection for the foreseeable future. And so that's something that I really try to engage in. So again, no judgment if you actually like everything and love everything. But if you're someone who finds yourself regretting dolls a whole lot, that could be a good way to kind of reduce your impact. Because if you're buying dolls and then constantly like getting rid of them, like donating them secondhand or shipping them to somewhere else or throwing them away or anything like that, that's going to have more negative consequences than if you just don't buy the dolls that you like don't actually feel that strongly about to begin with. So that's definitely something that we can do. And then the other thing that I think falls within the reduce category is the way in which people buy their dolls. Now, again, this is the one where like, I don't know your individual situation. And so if this is not feasible for you, I'm not here to judge you, right? But if you can buy in store, I do think that that has fewer environmental impacts than buying online. Once again, if that's not an option for you, like if you can't get to the store, if the stores in your area don't carry dolls, whatever the situation might be, that's fine. Like if you have to buy online, you have to buy online. But if buying in store is an option for you, I think that it is ever so slightly better because the like chain of supply, as I understand it, could be wrong, I'm not an expert, didn't go to school for this or anything like that, is that the manufacturer ships dolls to stores and then the stores unbox them, put them on the shelves. And then if you're buying from the store, you then grab the doll, go home, like that's the situation. Whereas if you buy online, the manufacturer is going to be shipping dolls to either a store or a warehouse, and then the store or warehouse is going to be unboxing them. And then if you want it to be shipped to you, the store or warehouse is going to repackage the doll with a new box, with new tape, new like labels and all of that jazz, and then also have to ship it to you. So if you're buying a doll online, there is inherently going to be a little bit more use in terms of the packaging to get it to you, and then also the carbon emissions or whatever other type of emissions there might be to get the doll from the store or warehouse to your place of residence. So it's not like the biggest thing ever. A lot of these things aren't. A lot of it is like little tiny things that just kind of add up when you do it several times or when multiple people are doing it. And again, I know that this is not feasible for everyone, but if you are someone who like can routinely buy dolls in store, it might be worth your while if this is something you're worried about, because that way there's just a little bit less like cardboard being used, a little bit less fuel being used, and all of that jazz. So it's definitely a good option if stores near you actually stock dolls. That brings us to the reuse category, which I think is definitely like the biggest one that we as doll collectors can do. And the most obvious answer there, and like the one that I think I got the most, was to buy dolls secondhand. So I mentioned earlier, once a doll has been manufactured, there has inherently already been some sort of environmental impact, right? Like once the factory produces a doll, regardless of whether or not you buy it on the shelf, like there's already something that's been going on there. And that's where I feel like the companies do have some responsibility because, like, obviously they want to produce something, but they can produce it in a more environmentally friendly way. And so that's kind of who I think has the responsibility on the manufacturing end. But in terms of what we can do, as I said, we can reduce like the number of dolls that we want to buy. And then we can also try to buy dolls secondhand or get dolls in the thrift store. This might be buying a doll that is brand new in box online from someone secondhand who decided to sell it, or it might be buying an out of box doll online, or it might be going to thrift stores and finding a doll who's in rough shape and fixing them up, or maybe just going to like doll shows or swap meets and stuff like that and buying dolls secondhand there. Because again, once a doll's been created, that's already had some sort of impact. And so at that point, I think the best thing that we as doll collectors can do is try to do our best to make sure those dolls don't end up in a landfill. Because ultimately speaking, if a doll doesn't pass hands one way or another from one person to another person, at some point that doll is probably going to end up in a landfill. And that's no good. You know, again, it's like something small, but when it's doll after doll after doll after doll, it does kind of tend to add up quickly. And because a lot of dolls are made using plastic, it's not like it's something that's going to break down and biodegrade and like just go back to the earth, right? It's just going to sit there in a landfill for X number of years. And that's not the best. So if we try to make a habit of buying dolls secondhand or saving dolls from the thrift. A lot of you actually mentioned that, where you guys said that you really like buying thrifted dolls and like fixing them up, and like you kind of make that hobby a secondary hobby within doll collecting. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, like those are just different ways that we can kind of keep dolls from ending up in a landfill. And then the reverse of that is that if you do find yourself not liking a doll anymore, or maybe you're like me and you like a lot of things that a doll comes with, but like the accessories or something aren't for you, the other side of that is that we can make sure that we are donating or giving away or selling dolls or doll pieces that we don't personally like anymore, instead of tossing them into the trash. I do this like semi-frequently with my doll collections, where I will go through and kind of purge everything. Like I did a purge a while ago, and I went through my entire Rainbow High collection and all of the dolls and clothing and accessories that I didn't like want to keep personally. I sold on a lot on eBay because, you know, some other Rainbow High collector is going to like that stuff. And that way it's going to someone else instead of going just into the trash and affecting the earth in a negative way. And hopefully that other person can love it and get something out of it that I wasn't getting out of it. So that's kind of like the two sides of the coin is you can like donate or give away, sell, that sort of thing, your dolls or doll pieces that you don't want anymore. And then you can also be on the other side of that and be buying secondhand where applicable and try to keep dolls out of a landfill that way. And then the other big thing you can do in terms of reusing, and this is like a huge umbrella thing, it's just reusing the things that dolls come with, specifically the packaging. I know like the Magic Mixies Pixlings are one of the doll brands on the market at the moment that I think is kind of most known for having a lot of waste, especially within like adult doll collecting communities, because a lot of adult doll collectors aren't really a big fan of the unboxing gimmick, or at least like the unboxing gimmick is not the main appeal of the doll. And they have like these nice potion bottles. So if you are someone who's crafty, you can use the potion bottles either for storage, or you can make them into a display piece, or you can repurpose them. But it does even go beyond that. I know I personally have used like the clear plastic panels of doll boxes that are typically on the front, so you can actually see the doll, to make like wings for my custom dolls. I think one of the people who responded to my community post said that they use that same plastic for different cosplay pieces, which is super, super cool. Basically anything that you might need plastic for, as long as it's small enough, obviously, those clear panels can definitely be used in a crafty way. Even the cardboard can be used in a crafty way. I feel like I've seen a weird amount of people on TikTok recently, I don't know if this is just like my TikTok feed, who will take cardboard and like cut it and tape it into shapes and then paper mache it and like make cool shaped shelves for themselves. So that's something that you could do with like the cardboard from doll boxes, as well as use it as a base for something, or you could paint on top of the cardboard. There's so many things that you can do. One of my favorite things is the little rubber bands that come with doll packaging a lot of the time. I will try to like, some of them you can't because the way that it's packaged, but when it's packaged in a way that you can avoid cutting it and you can just like unloop it and take it off. I save all those and I use them for restyling doll hair. So like I have never had to buy hair ties for dolls, like just clear rubber bands for dolls, like to do their hair. Cause I have a whole bunch that are saved up from the packaging where it might have been something that was like keeping a phone on a doll's hand in the box, but it's a perfectly good little clear rubber band. It's already tiny. So I just save those for later. And so then when I want to put a doll's hair in a ponytail and she came with straight, like just down hair, I have a rubber band that I can use. So that's like the number one thing for me. Not that it's the most important one, but it's the one that I find myself weirdly using the most. And then even if you aren't someone who's crafty, because, you know, not everyone is, that's chill. Everyone has different talents. I feel like most people know someone who's kind of crafty. If you don't, you don't, you know, like again, not here to judge you. But if you have a friend who's super crafty, like maybe that's not what you're into, but you have a friend who's always making something or always collecting art supplies, you can give them packaging and pieces and stuff like that to use in their art supplies. Even like little doll accessories. Like I said earlier, you can give them away or donate them or sell them. One of the places you can give them away, not necessarily like the intended purpose, but if you don't know anyone who's going to play with the accessories, they can still be used in art. Like people who make little dioramas or something, I'm sure would love a lot of little doll accessories. I just feel like there's like 1,002 things that you can do with doll packaging if you are someone who like has the skill set and is crafty. And again, if you're not, if you give it to someone who is crafty, I'm sure they would appreciate it. It feels weird to say that, be like, hey, give your friends trash, but like genuinely speaking, some creative people are always looking for supplies, especially weird supplies, because sometimes it just like strikes a fun little creative chord in their brain. So it definitely can't hurt. And it's just really cool to think about using something that ultimately would be trash and turning it into something that is beautiful or useful or whatever the case may be. So I do think that is a really good and also a reasonably easy one to do and to reduce your environmental impact. And that brings us all the way to recycle, which is like ultimately the most boring one that I have to talk about today because the answer is just to recycle where you can, which like, duh, but I still wanted to include it on here. I feel like it depends. Like sometimes doll companies seem like they're listening and sometimes they don't. For a while, I know like LOL, OMG, and the tweens were coming with a lot of paper packaging that was recyclable so that instead of having just like a bunch of plastic bags that may or may not be made of the right sort of plastic, you could like get rid of the blind bags in a more responsible way. Some of the like cardboard and some of the plastic that is used on a bunch of other brands can be recycled. And so this one isn't super exciting, but I do think it's like a relatively easy thing that people can do if they have access to a recycling service, especially if you take the time when you like unbox a doll, because every plastic is different. Like that gets really, really complicated and detailed. And also every recycling place is different in terms of what plastics they can and cannot accept. So say you have a doll box where like the plastic is recyclable, you can cut that away from the cardboard because oftentimes the cardboard and the plastic do have to go to different places or have to be treated in different ways. I don't know, like, I don't know everyone's situation again because they're all very, very different. My recycling service, it all goes in like the same bin, but they do appreciate when it's like separated. So you can separate the plastic from the cardboard. And if they both can be recycled, super duper, pop it in there. If say only the cardboard can be recycled, then you can still recycle the cardboard. And then if you have to throw away the plastic, or you can reuse the plastic or whatever the case might be, it's just like something that is, I think, a little bit more baseline, but still definitely something that is good to do. So not as exciting, but still notable. But yes, guys, that just about covers it for today. A big thank you again to everyone who submitted their responses and made these suggestions as far as how we as doll collectors can be more environmentally responsible. If you have other ideas, absolutely drop them in the comments down below. I would love to hear more, even if they're not featured in a video. I do think it's just like a good resource to kind of be able to go through the comments and get different suggestions and different ideas from y'all. But yeah, hopefully this was fun and informative. I know it's like not as lighthearted as some of the other stuff that I post on here, but I do think that it's like a good topic. And I also think it's probably something that a decent number of us doll collectors struggle with, just because obviously doll collecting is something that makes us happy, or we wouldn't do it. That'd be kind of weird to be buying dolls if it makes you sad. But at the same time, like taking care of the planet is important for a lot of people, and I completely understand that. And so I do think sometimes those things can butt heads. So hopefully the things that we went over today are a good way to kind of balance those out and a good way for you to feel like you can be doing something that is still good for the environment without having to sacrifice something that makes you happy. So yeah, hopefully y'all got something out of it, but that is going to be it for today, guys. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or night or whatever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.